But what critical race theory says is if that black letter law you're learning has some kind of racial animus to it, you need to understand that so that when you come out, you're not just practicing and perpetuating the standard. You are actually challenging the standard. So now what has happened is there have been attorneys like me who come out and said, you know, in 1776, when you all in this constitution and declaring independence from England, we weren't at the table because we were at home picking your cotton for your pocketbook, right? So what we're trying to do now is create what I call black equity, where we say there are things that this country owes us we may never get, but we're owed. And certainly moving forward, we don't want to continue to perpetuate some of the things that have already provided so much animus in our community. And it some of the stuff is subtle, some of the stuff is major. Like you talking about standardized testing and the way that education systems prioritize what is quote unquote a prestigious school versus what's not. And prestigious schools, you'll notice, don't have black people, right? So it's stuff like that, like the school systems, the benefit programs, the hairstyles for certain jobs, like the way that we're trying to expand kind of the lens of what is the measure of equality in America, if that's the value that we're truly seeking. And I think the problem for that is once we start presenting that information and people start learning it in mass, then when folks know better, they demand better. And when you demand better, that shifts the power paradigm. So that's kind of why you're seeing this.
Could this eventually be worked down to like that level, like the lower level in kindergarten? I mean, like like merged into the history lessons a little bit. Like I see the point of it being taught in law school because, like you said, we sending them out into the workforce as the market. They can make. I'm glad it's being taught there first because they can actually affect change. But like I'm saying, can we bring it down to the children's level, you know, elementary, middle, and high, so that we could just, like Dwayne said, make it so it could be a flashlight and say, this is the country that you're in. Change it when you get empowered.
I certainly think it can be done, but I also think it's hard to talk about critical race theory to somebody who hasn't done the law school part, right? So if you don't know what the laws are, it's really hard to learn how the laws are set up in a certain way. And I think if I had to guess, this is why they tie it so hard to 1619. 1619 is just a historic study of all the ways in which black culture was basically exploited for white profits, right? And because of 1619 and because it was accessible in an audiobook format, people listened to it. And a lot of social studies teachers were using it in their high school classes to say, this is how we got over on black people and it's not right. And we need to see equity. That's not critical race theory. That's just history.
That just so happens to provide an accurate portrait of what critical race theory in America looks like.
So I thought, well, because we were talking about, you know, critical race theory being introduced into schools, and that's been the controversial issue. So do you think? And you know, my wife was asking me, kind of questioning me about it. Was like, do you think kids should be learning this? Do you think it may make our children hateful of white people?
Well, I'll say this. I mean,
answer that question as well. You know, do you think that could happen? Learning this kind of information that way.
I feel like this. I feel like our kids are already learning that, but they're being victimized by it right now. So all it does is give them the information to understand why certain systems are the way it is. Now, if they decide to demand accountability, that should be what we want. But I also understand how with critical race theory being at a law school, it's very different because at a law school, you're learning laws and procedures. In high school, you're still learning to challenge things. And what they're scared of is a whole bunch of black kids coming in militant, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale and Angela Davis, and you don't get through the curriculum that you got to get through to be able to teach it.
I got a question.
Exactly.
I was reading ahead of this curriculum. You know,
I mean, like teachers don't want to deal with uncomfortable questions. You see how teachers get when we asked about slavery, right? And it's like, well, it was more like employment that was unfair. Like, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. But you know, like people want to do.
Yeah, the slaves were indentured servants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you got to realize too, and I'm not making, and this is for laughs for the most part, but most of those teachers that was teaching us, at least the vast majority of people in this on this stage right now,
right?
Our great grandparents were probably slaves.
Yep.
Right.
So when they talked to us, it was like,
oh yeah,
you know, well, little Johnny, okay, Cole, yeah. So it was already messed up. It was a messed up way. It was like talking to the rape victim about how violent the rape was. Right. So they were on pins and needles because most of them were probably good people who grew up in a certain way. But the thing that I want to say is this it's on time, because I've been looking at a couple different cities and the cultures and how the black communities in those cities, two cities being Chicago and Jacksonville, Florida. There's just two examples out of any. But if you look at life for the average black person in these cities, most people were like, man, y'all some animals. How can y'all live like this? What happens to make you want to kill the person that lives around the block from you that you went to high school with, and then you end up shooting it out with them and then continue? Next thing you know, 400 people dead in the summer. You know, that type of behavior.
Right.
But critical race theory, it explains that without, I mean, if you understood critical race theory, you will understand that when you look at the city of Chicago, you'll understand how redlining turned the south side, the west side, and the north side of Chicago into the violent, economic, depraved area that it's become. And we all know what happens when you take away critical needs from people. They start acting out. And I even asked myself this question. I was like, man, why all these gang leaders who just so happen to be prominent musicians or prominent hustlers or whatever the case? I was like, how do these guys pop up on the scene? I don't even know if you guys know any of these names that I'm about to rattle off. But the King Vons, the Little Durks, the FBG Duck, those names, right? Or if you go to Miami, the Kodak Black, the Trick Daddy, or anybody, you take those names and you like, man, these some killers, these some dope dealers. How'd they get rich? Right. Well, I started looking at it. I was like, God gave us all the same thing. What we see over here is people who probably could have been ministers, community leaders, if they were brought up in a different society. But we see what leadership in that raw form turns into when a society has been corrupted by the greater society. And critical race theory exposes that. So I think some people hear that term and get nervous. Oh, it's just telling the truth about race in America. That's, I think, is that fair to say, Jay, that at the heart of critical race theory is just being completely honest and not trying to, oh yeah, white people did this, but they're not bad people. No, it's just saying that, hey, this happened. Right. This law was created and this would happen as a result of it. I mean,
I dig it. I guess it's like a to me it just seems like just the full picture. You know, like in 1950 this happened, and this happened. You know, like these are you know, instead of slavery getting a one page, and we enslaved the people. All right, then Martin Luther King came along.
Right.
Right.
You know, like instead of the skipping, it's a full picture of what happened. I do say though, like, and I understand what you're saying. Like, it's already kind of been slanted for years, for decades, almost centuries. that you know, the educational social studies system has went one direction, or everything was kumbaya and happy and things of that nature. And we need more clarification of what happened. You know, why did they enslave, and why was there redlining, and why was the Jim Crow? Why? And kind of like I said, a full picture. My question is, so when do you guys think these topics should begin to be discussed, or how?